in today's video I'm going to be playing some blues, and I'm returning to the perennial challenge of playing the blues chord changes. And I suppose this is one of the reasons why us guitar players love the blues so much. On one level, it's such a simple thing. You've got 3 chords and you can play over the blues using just a handful of notes, but at the same time there are so many different ways that you can approach it, and it can really be as complex or as simple as you want to make it. And what I've got for you in this video is one method to start playing those changes to make it sound like you really know what you're doing over a blues. And by playing the changes, I mean describing the chords as they go by. You've got a choice when you play the blues. You can either just play one scale or one sound and make it work throughout the whole thing, or you can kind of go deeper into the chord progression and describe each chord as it passes. And those are choices you've got. You don't have to play the changes every time. You can do it all of the time, some of the time, none of the time. It's completely up to you, but it's certainly something that's interesting to explore, and it can give you some really melodic and sophisticated sounding results. So I'm going to be showing you one method of doing this. And yeah, when you're playing the blues, do you really want to be thinking in terms of methods and scales and theory and all of that stuff? And no, probably you don't. Blues is about expression and emotion, but I think when you're in the practice room, this is stuff that's worth working on, and ideally you get to the place where you can internalize all of that stuff. You've got these sounds in your ears, and then when you're actually playing and performing, you can forget all of that stuff and focus on the stuff that really matters. Now, there are loads of options when it comes to playing over blues chord changes. You've got pentatonics, major and minor, blues scales, you've got Mixolydian mode, Dorian mode, diminished scales, arpeggios, triads. You know, it can be quite overwhelming. So in this video, I actually want to stick to some very simple basic materials. We're just going to be focusing on major and minor pentatonic scales, and the way it's going to work is like this. Over the 1 chord in the blues, we're going to be using the major pentatonic scale. Over the 4 chord, I'm going to use the minor pentatonic scale, and then over the 5 chord, I'm using the minor pentatonic scale, but from the root of the 5 chord. So I'm going to explain exactly how this works and why this sounds good as we progress through this video. But to start with, let's just have a little recap of those basic scale types. I'm going to assume that this is familiar stuff to most of you, but I'm going to do this in the key of A. It's going to be a blues in A, so the A minor pentatonic, obviously enough, could be played like this. So the notes there are A, C, D, E and G, and we're just repeating them in the higher octave. That's sometimes referred to as pattern 1, box 1 of the scale. I'm sure everybody knows that. The A major pentatonic scale, one way of doing it would be to shift everything down 3 frets. That's the A major pentatonic scale, and you might notice that it's exactly the same as the F sharp minor pentatonic scale. Those scales share the same notes. It's the relative minor and major, but of course the difference is with the A major pentatonic scale, you want to be thinking about A as the home note. That's why I'm starting and ending the scale on this note rather than on this note. So that's quite a useful trick. If you want the major pentatonic scale and you know your minor pentatonic, you can just move everything down 3 frets and you will have the major pentatonic scale. Another good way of playing the major pentatonic scale, particularly if you're shifting between minor and major, would be to learn the scales, the 2 scales, in the same position. So if you've got A minor pentatonic here, we could play A major pentatonic like this. And and that way you've got the two scales in the same area of the neck. They're kind of superimposed over the top of one another, and it's easier then to switch between the two scales and to create smooth melodies when doing so. One exercise you could try would just be playing the A minor pentatonic and the A major pentatonic just back to back, one after the other in the same position. Following the other without a break, just playing steady eighth notes there. If you're a more advanced player, you could try that in some of the other positions on the fretboard as well. You've got 4 other places on the neck where you could do this if you're using the cage system. So the next zone of the neck would be the D form, so you would have the A minor pentatonic, and the A major pentatonic. Always like to start and finish on the root note in this particular scale form. This is the lowest available root note, so I start on that, go up to the highest note in the scale, then go down to the lowest available note in this particular zone of the fretboard, and then I'm coming back up, finishing on the root note. That way I'm really establishing and hearing that as the tonal center, as the home note. And you can do that in 3 other areas of the fretboard as well. I'm not going to demonstrate all of that in this video, but that certainly would be a great exercise to try if you're more of an intermediate or advanced player. Those are the scale shapes then. What about using those scale shapes over a blues in A? So over the 1 chord, which is an A or an A7 chord, I said we're going to use major pentatonic over this chord. So we can think about this scale shape, and obviously just going up and down a scale isn't going to sound good. You need to find the music within that scale. So in my little intro solo, I was playing ideas similar to this one. So noodling about the scale a bit, but trying to make it sound musical. You want phrasing, you want rhythm, you want some bluesy language in there. So bending, and a particularly good note to bend in this position of the scale is the B, bending it up to the C sharp. That's a really sweet sounding bend. So in terms of intervals, on the top string we've got an A, we've got a B, and we can bend that up to a C sharp. So it's bending the second up to the major third. The major third is a nice sweet sounding note. So you can get lots of mileage out of that bend. So we're doing that over the 1 chord. In this particular blues, my backing track had 4 straight bars on the 1 chord. There wasn't a quick change to the 4 chord in the second bar. We just got 4 bars, which gives you a bit of time to get into the sound of that major pentatonic scale. And then we change to the 4 chord, which is a D or a D7 chord, and that's where I'm changing to the A minor pentatonic scale. And in my little solo at the start, I think I just went. So noodling about that minor pentatonic scale, but trying to make it sound bluesy, trying to make it sound musical. One of the important things here is that you smoothly make that shift. You don't want it to sound clunky, like, okay, I'm playing major pentatonic, then there's a clumsy shift into the minor pentatonic scale. You want that to sound smooth. And this is where it does help having the 2 scales in the same position, and you kind of go to the nearest note. So I was already here. And then I know that I've got my minor pentatonic note here. The nearest minor pentatonic note is here, so I can go from the 7th fret, which is a major pentatonic note, up 1 fret, and then I'm into the minor pentatonic scale, and it's a smooth sound. Let me just talk briefly about why this works, why it sounds good to go from the major pentatonic on the 1 to the minor pentatonic on the 4. and it's because the notes really fit and describe the chords. If we look at the chord shapes here, the A7 and the D7, the key note is this one. We've got the C sharp, which is the third of the A7 chord. That note is only found in the A major pentatonic scale, and then the C natural here is the flat 7 of our 4 chord, and that note is only found in the minor pentatonic scale. So it's really just that one note is really descriptive of that change. So you can see it kind of visually with your chords here. You can see it up here as well. So this A7 shape, and then if we go here, you've got that major third of the 1 going down 1 fret, and that hits the flat 7 of the 4 chord. So that's really what this is all about in theoretical terms. But you don't want to be thinking theory. You want to be able to hear this and have that sound in your head, and then have that come out through your fingers, rather than be thinking in terms of scales and theory when you're actually taking a blues solo. So I was on the 4 chord, just playing around with the minor pentatonic. And I've got 2 bars on the 4 chord there, and then back to the 1 chord, and I'm going to switch back to the major pentatonic here. So trying to do it smoothly here, so I might go the other way. I might go from this C to the C sharp. So and then once I've hit this C sharp, I can continue with some major pentatonic ideas. And then we come to the 5 chord, and what I'm going to suggest you do here is play E minor pentatonic. So we're playing the minor pentatonic from the root of the 5 chord, which is an E or an E7. You can play this scale in various different places on the fretboard. Let's do it here in the 7th position. So there's our root note, 7th fret on the 5th string, and there's our E minor pentatonic scale. You could include the flat 5th in all of these minor pentatonic scales if you wanted to make them blues scales, but that's our E minor pentatonic. And the lick I played in my solo, I can't remember it exactly, but I think I started at the top of the scale. So that works very nicely over the 5 chord. Then we're going to the 4 chord and back to the 1 chord, and then there's a little turnaround. So over the rest of the blues form, I'm going to suggest you keep it simple and just go back to A minor pentatonic for that final 4 chord, and then the last 2 bars as well. And that was my opening 12 bar solo. So major pentatonic, more major pentatonic, switching to the minor pentatonic over the 4, back to major for the 1, then E minor pentatonic, and then A minor pentatonic. And in my second 12 bar chorus, I was thinking in exactly the same way, the same scale choices, but I wanted my solo to build a little bit, so I moved a little bit higher up the neck. And this is where knowledge of all of your minor and major pentatonic scale positions comes in really handy. Yes, I understand it's a long-term project to get all of those scale shapes under your fingers, but it's definitely a worthwhile one if you want to move beyond that beginner and early intermediate kind of a level. So I've got some options up here. So in the kind of 9th position, you've got A major pentatonic like this. And that's how I started my second chorus of the blues. So it's really the same kind of language that I was using in the first chorus, but I was playing it on the B and G strings a little bit higher up the neck. And then I can move into the next position as well. So I've got A major pentatonic here. And with the major pentatonic, you've got a choice of adding in the minor third, so you create that kind of major blues scale sound. That's a good addition. A good little addition to the scale. So that was the first 4 bars. Then I'm switching to minor pentatonic, and what about if I play here? So it's A minor pentatonic up in the 12th position. And then I think I did do that 3 fret trick. So A minor pentatonic, down 3 frets, same scale shape, and I can play a major pentatonic. And I think I even did that little sort of sliding 6 move, so going slightly outside of the A major pentatonic there. But this is, for me, this is kind of a country idea. I often use kind of country ideas in blues and vice versa, and this is really just a little country lick that works over the A7 chord. Then we hit the 5 chord again, and we're just playing E minor pentatonic in the 12th position, and then we're back home to the 1 chord. So here you can go a major or minor. So if you want to go A major, you could just go up a couple of frets, and I think I ended my solo with just a stock, just kind of a stock turnaround phrase. It's a kind of blues cliche, really. It's kind of worth having a few of those that you know, and you can just kind of plug those in at the end of a 12-bar blues. So it's a bit of a cliche, that one, but it's always going to work, and you know, it's a part of the language of the blues, so I don't think there's any shame in using those kind of standard blues licks. So that's what I was playing and what I was thinking when I took my solo. And you've got a choice. You can learn that solo note for note if you want to. It's all going to be written out in the tab. And if you've never done this kind of thing before, that might be a good idea. This will get these kind of sounds into your ears. It will give you a bit of vocabulary. But I think as soon as possible, you want to start doing your own thing using these concepts. So the big idea in this video is this whole idea of major pentatonic on the 1, minor pentatonic on the 4, and over the 5 chord using the minor pentatonic from the root of that chord. And if you spend just a little bit of time playing around with these ideas, I think quite quickly you will add a new dimension to your blues playing. You're going to start sounding a little bit more interesting, a little bit more sophisticated. So give it a try, get the backing track on, or make your own backing track using a looper pedal, and try and get some of these ideas into your own playing. The gear that I'm using today, and I'm keeping it really simple, actually just got a guitar going straight into an amp, which is terribly old-fashioned of me. The guitar is a Les Paul, of course. This is a 59 reissue Les Paul. Amp is a Fender Princeton, and I'm turned up pretty loud today. Princeton's on about 8, and it's something I like to do to get nice, authentic, kind of raw blues sounds. There's nothing quite like turning up a nice valve amp nice and loud, and you just get a response which is not quite like any pedal that I've come across. I know there are pedals that are supposed to emulate that kind of thing, but they never quite do it for me. So from time to time it's worth just turning up. Obviously it's going to get loud, and even with a Fender Princeton it's pretty loud, so I am actually using my aux box as an attenuator when I'm recording this video, just otherwise the volume and just gets all over the microphones, and it makes editing and mixing the audio for this video a bit of a nightmare. So I'm just taking down the volume of the amp in the room with the aux box. You plug that in between the speaker and the amp, and then you've got an extra volume control. You can turn down the amp, but you still get the same tone and the same response from the amp itself. That's it for today's video. I hope you found it interesting. Hope you found it useful. Of course, tab and the backing track is going to be up on my Patreon page. And I'm not a blues channel by any stretch of the imagination, but I have got quite a lot of other blues content up there. So if that's your thing, just do a search on my website or on the channel and you should find some of that other stuff. Thanks very much for watching. See you next time.